Some chapters of history are not written in books. They are whispered in alleyways, buried in unmarked graves, and hidden behind a name that people still lower their voices to say. This is one of those chapters. Indonesia, early 1980s. The streets of major cities had become something that kept ordinary people awake at night. Crime had grown bold, dangerously bold. Gangs operated in the open. Career criminals walked free again and again, and somewhere inside the highest levels of power, a decision was made. Not a loud decision, not one announced in parliament or printed in newspapers. A quiet decision. The kind that leaves no paper trail. Bodies started appearing, not in the middle of gunfights, not during arrests gone wrong, just bodies. Men with criminal records, known troublemakers, people whose names were already marked in police files, found dead on roadsides, shot with no witnesses, no investigation, no explanation. The killings were clean, calculated, and completely invisible in terms of who was responsible. The public had a name for it before the government ever admitted it existed. They called it Petrus, short for Penembakan Mysterious, the mysterious shootings. And the man whose shadow stretched across all of it was someone the streets had already crowned with a title far darker than any official rank. They called him the King of Death. He wasn't presented as a villain in the beginning. In fact, to many people watching their neighborhoods get safer, he looked like a solution. Crime rates dropped. The bold criminals who once swaggered through the streets suddenly disappeared. Mothers could walk home at night. Markets felt calmer. And for a brief moment, the brutal silence felt like peace. But peace built on unmarked graves is never really peace. Behind the title of King of Death was a man shaped by a system that had taught him that order required sacrifice and that the law was simply too slow to keep up with the disorder. He had lived inside the machinery of power long enough to believe that what he was doing was not just allowed but necessary. He was not a monster in his own eyes. He was a surgeon cutting out infection. A fire burning away the rot. That was the story he told himself. And that is where the drama lives, not in the killings themselves, but in the space between the man and the myth. Between the father, the soldier, the strategist, and the shadow that followed him home every night. Because no matter how many times power justifies its own violence, the weight of it still lands somewhere. In the silences over dinner, in the way certain names are never spoken, in the eyes of people who know things they are not allowed to say. Decades later, the operation was acknowledged. Leaders who once denied it eventually confirmed it. The killings were real, the orders were real. And the man behind the title, the one the streets had named the King of Death, became one of the most debated figures in modern Indonesian history. Hero to some, criminal to others. And to history itself simply a mirror held up to what a government looks like when it decides that justice is too slow and silence is cheaper. This is not just a story about one man. It is a story about what happens when power hides behind a nickname and how long it takes for the truth to crawl out from beneath it.